Anybody got this like furrowed brow? This is one of those Bible passages you read and you go, I don't like this. It's painful and it's agony and I don't like the Bible right now. Maybe I should ask the question from last month's series. We talked about evolving and resolving to make a change in our life, to be transformed, to be ministers of reconciliation, to live lives of purpose and transformation. What does it look like? Are we ready to do that? Are we really ready to take up our own cross? Are we ready to embrace this ministry of being a disciple, to be sent out? Are you ready for your pastor to leave for 4 months on renewal? I want you to look around real quick. Okay, this gives you permission to turn your head, see? Okay, good. Look around at everybody, or just kind of move your eyes, and that way you can not have to move your head a whole lot. These people around you are your friends, your neighbors, your community of faith, your brothers and sisters in Christ. These are the disciples. We are together the disciples. What does it look like to entrust ministry to your neighbor or the person sitting next to you, to take leadership in ministry and the church? What does it look like to claim ownership in something that has existed before you and will exist after you, and that is an eternal relationship with God? This is a big year. It's an exciting year. There's opportunities for Johnson River of Life, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen. You guys all get the opportunity to feel like the disciples might have felt when Jesus left and they were all going, uh-oh, what do we do now? Maybe, in fact, I've heard people ask that kind of question. I'm going to get to that. What does it look like when all of a sudden we feel like we are the ones who are carrying the burden? What is it like to take ownership? Well, a lot of people have different definitions of what's exciting. I mean, I know people who say that parachute jumping is exciting. Anybody else say, yeah, that's totally me? Some of you. I was going to say, some that's done it. Yeah, you probably say, yeah, it is. I know people who say rock climbing, that is like the best. I mean, you're climbing and there's a little bit of, well, actually, if you do it quite a bit, it's really not a whole lot of nerves, but there's muscles and flexibility and all kinds of endurance involved. But it's exciting to go out and do. I've actually heard some people say that childbirth is exciting. Anybody nod your head? Ugh. Okay, there's one group that's saying, yeah, that was great. I kind of enjoyed that. There's a group going, no, that was not. Childbirth is exciting. And when you hold that child in your hand, oh man, that's exciting. But there's other things that go with it. A little bit of pain maybe, or agony, or stress, or patience, emotions, ups and downs. Could say that about a new job. I know people who've been looking for a long time, people who get a new job, and then they're faced with it, and there's this anxiety of who am I or what am I? What does it look like? I'm not sure what the expectations are, and there's this thrill of the ride, but there's this fear that goes with it just a little bit. I'm convinced that excitement is like the highest of highs in all of our life, and we know what that looks like, but it always starts different. I mean, how many of you like roller coasters? Okay, good. Some of you do. Is the part that you like the best is like when you get to the very top of that first peak and you feel the roller coaster kind of tipping and pulling you this way, and you feel your whole body like ready to just be tossed off of the edge? Some of you are looking at me going, nope, I'm getting sick. Don't talk about that anymore. Others of you, you know what that thrill is, and you're ready to take the ride. You're ready to just plummet to the earth and go through these spins and twists. Actually, my favorite of all of those is the ones that take you up and they hold you. They like suspend you there for a moment, just let you think about it and look. And then it's not even just a release. It's not just like they release you and gravity goes, because you kind of expect, you know what gravity feels like. But no, they've got these like rocket propulsions behind them, and when they release you, it's like straight toward the earth. You're plummeting straight towards the earth, and you're like, ah! And then hopefully at that last moment, it's going to take the curve, and then you're going to go through these loops and spins. Okay, some of you really are getting sick, I think, here. But you know what I'm talking about? It's that kind of feeling, that kind of ride of excitement. I don't think we often imagine faith as a roller coaster ride. or something that can be that exciting or make our stomach spin that much. But I'm telling you that faith does that more than any other thing in this life. When you really give yourself to it, when you really allow it to throw you off the edge and drop into that ride, all of a sudden something changes in us. It's not just physical, it's not just emotional or spiritual, it's physiological. It changes us completely. Jesus begins to take his disciples on this roller coaster ride in Luke chapter 14. And I'm going to get to the passage we just talked about, which is that challenging passage of you got to hate these people, which is not quite exactly, I don't think. But he's talking at the beginning of chapter 14 about some amazing things. And the first thing that he does is he heals somebody. Now, is it amazing? I mean, is it just radically different or new or a surprise to you that Jesus would heal somebody? Nah, it's not a surprise. I mean, you kind of expect Jesus to do some healing, don't you? I mean, every time you turn the page, Jesus is healing a leper or somebody who's blind or somebody who can't walk. Jesus is healing all the time. People are bringing people to Jesus to be healed. But he does something different here that's radical, that people are uncomfortable with. He heals somebody on the Sabbath. Uh-oh. He just broke the rules. He's a rule breaker now. He's no good. Okay, I think Jesus is beginning to teach a lesson in all of this. In fact, the sequence of Luke chapter 14, he teaches us something at the very beginning. He says, if you're going to be a disciple, if you're going to be like me, you have to be willing to do what is good, even when people don't think it's right. You have to be able to do what is good, even when their interpretation of the law says you shouldn't do that. That's kind of a challenge. What does it look like to do good in the face of adversity? And then Jesus goes on and he continues. He tells a parable about a wedding feast. And he tells about this wedding feast and people who are coming in. And I mean, this is like one of the uppity kind of class parties you might be lucky to be invited to. And he says, when you get there, don't think of yourself as great. Don't exalt yourself and sit next to the master. Don't sit high at the table. Sit low. Humble yourselves. Come in with humility. He says, for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. So Jesus is now teaching the second point of the message. He says, as a community, when we join together, when we celebrate the feast, which we will celebrate communion, when we celebrate like that together, we should come humbly into the presence of each other, into the presence of the Master of God. Then he goes on and tells another story about the banquet. This banquet's different. He says, I want you to go out, and he tells his servants, so all of those who've already been identified, who've come to the feast, who are humble and joined together with the purpose of unity. And he says, now I want you to go and invite people to this banquet. I want you to invite my friends and my neighbors, the people I associate with. Go and invite them. Now, does everybody know how this story goes? They invite their neighbors, but all of them have excuses. I mean, have you ever met somebody with an excuse? I mean, well, I've got crops in the field. I'm really too busy. I can't get off today. I've got to work. I really can't. I've got family situations or somebody I've got to take care of this way, or I'm just too tired. I'm going to sleep in today. I mean, on and on. The list of excuses can just be listed. So the servants come back and say, well, no one could come. And then Jesus says, well, then go quickly into the streets, into the lanes, and the cities, and bring in the poor and the crippled and the blind and the lame. Invite everyone into this feast. Okay, so now Jesus is really teaching his third point. He's teaching, go out and invite everyone. What does it look like to do good in the face of adversity, to come humbly together, united, and then to go and invite everyone? Wow, Jesus has just taught really what it looks like to be a disciple and the ministry of being a disciple. And then he goes on and it's kind of like getting on the roller coaster, buckling up, you're all safe and things feel good. And yeah, I can learn this lesson. And then you hit that first notch and it starts pulling you up, tuk, 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 right? And you get to the top and you look out and you think, this is a nice view. I kind of like it up here. I've been at the top there before where if any of you have heard somebody say, let me out. Anybody heard somebody scream that? They're at the top and they're just like, no, I don't. Okay, I like it right here, but don't throw me over the edge. I think sometimes in our faith, we like that. We like to feel good. We like to find the top and feel like it's safe and it's beautiful and I can see everything, but we don't want to take that fall. And here we find Jesus actually kind of telling them that this is going to be more of a ride than you thought. And here it comes. He's inviting them to do something that's fearful. He's inviting them to go all in, to take a step into the unknown. He's inviting them to rearrange their priorities, to sacrifice of themselves. Jesus kind of gets riled up here. He goes off on them and he says, if you're not willing to give up everything for me, then you're in the wrong place. There's no more holding back. There's no more getting off the ride. The carpet is ripped out from underneath them, or actually the roller coaster just tips and starts going. And all of a sudden they're rocketing toward the earth on this ride that they're not sure what's going to happen. Faith can be exciting. It can be scary. It can be emotional. And I'll tell you, there's a couple times when Jesus is teaching, times like this when he's telling them they have to hate their family, times like when he's teaching about communion and this new meaning of it, and people don't understand. They get confused. They're anxious about it, and all of a sudden they turn their back and they walk away. They say, that's too much. I am not following this guy anymore. It's kind of like getting off at the top, saying, I'm done. And some do. But Jesus is expressing he has high expectations. Jesus is not expressing, hey, it's okay if you come to the synagogue once a month. It's okay if you come once a week and worship. It's okay if you just do these sacrificial offerings on occasion as you need to. No, Jesus is expressing you have to give everything. Jesus is saying that mission and ministry have first place in our life. That even family and friends and neighbors have a distant second that actually are reflected in our service of Christ as we serve others. It says that personal sacrifice, taking up our own cross, should be something that we do daily. And then he goes on, after he says some of these difficult things about putting God first, he goes on and he says, measure the cost. Decide whether or not it's too expensive to get on that roller coaster ride. Decide whether or not you really want to take the dip that's coming. Because if you get to the top and you yell, let me off, and you get off, people are going to look at you and say, what were they thinking? They weren't able to follow through. He says, if you're not able to build the tower, then don't even start. He says, if you were a king going against another army, would you not measure whether or not you could withstand the fiery arrows, whether or not you could stand against the spiritual warfare that was coming against you? And I'll tell you, as Christians, I've never told anyone that being a person of faith is an easy life. I've told people you will run into the same difficulties, you'll face the same mountains, the same pain as everyone else in the world, but you will have a God who is riding in the roller coaster with you. You will have a community of friends who are there holding your hands in everything that you face. That is what it means to be a part of this ride we call faith. He says, anyone who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciple. This is high expectation faith. And some people won't be interested. This sermon series this month, I'm talking about ownership. I'm talking about what it means for each of us to take on the ownership of a church, to say, this is mine, this is my investment, this is what's important to me. In fact, it's not even mine, but it's the fact that I sacrifice myself to do it for God because that's what God has done for me. Jesus, who laid down his own life for me, is asking me to give my life for the kingdom, for the church, for the proclamation of the word, for offering hope and healing, for doing what is good even when it's not accepted, for being humble even when people around us exalt themselves, for actually inviting everyone. That's what God is inviting us to. I'm going to get honest for just a moment. I think this is good timing for this sermon series because I've had people this last week even sat down and had some conversations, and people, 3 or 4 just this last week have asked me, now what's really going to happen? I'm a little bit anxious or worried about what's going to happen while you're gone. It's okay, you don't have to raise your hands for that. I want to assure you of a couple things. I believe this is God's timing, and I believe God has got a plan way bigger than we know. And God's going to do something more amazing in the time of my absence than He's been doing even in my presence. And I'm going to tell you part of the reason for that because I believe that things are falling into place. While I'm gone, you're going to have the district superintendent preaching. You're going to have a field outreach minister preaching. You're going to have some people in large places of connection with the church who don't often get to a lot of other small churches, and they're going to be coming and preaching for us. We've got some exciting events that will be happening during that time frame. We've got people coming back from Israel who's going to be sharing testimonies. We've got a chart that's being put together so when I'm gone, you'll even know, hey, if something happens or if I'm in the hospital, who do I call? What happens if I know somebody in the community who has a need? Who do I call that maybe we can work on their home? Or I want to get involved in this particular program or help teach ELL. How does that work? All these things are already coming together, and in fact, the structure that is taking place is greater than we've had in the past. And if anybody who's interested, you are welcome to come to one of the first Thursdays of the month. We have meetings that we have at New Hope, and it's kind of a group of all of us leaders getting together and talking about the ministry that's taking place and how to stay in connection and see that be healthy and strong. And I'm proud of what's taken place there. I've learned that in the midst of fears that are not talked about, fears that are hidden or stuck away in the closet, we have these fears, but we don't want to look at them, they often become self-fulfilling. Do you realize that? Because we're afraid of something, we don't get back on the horse. Because we're afraid of something, we don't open that door. We avoid a circumstance or avoid a relationship for a period of time because we don't want to have to face that fear. But here's the truth. Christ also tells us if we face that fear, we're not alone. And often when we face that fear, we find out that there's an answer just waiting there for us to open the door. What does it look like to live into our fear that way? What does it look like to get on that roller coaster even though we're afraid of the drop? During the months when we leave for Israel, June 12th, through me coming back October 13th, you guys are going to be on a bit of a ride. I'm going to be on a ride. I'm going to be struggling with God personally on a daily basis, out hiking and away from people, and then immersed in other circumstances of community and wrestling with my own faith. I'm going to come back. I'm going to have stories to share, and I'm going to be enthusiastic and energetic and renewed. And I believe that in that same time, God's going to be doing the same thing right here in things that you don't expect. I look at you guys, and as I asked you guys to look at each other earlier, and I look through my list of members here on Saturday and on Sunday, 100 of you weekly, and I think to myself, this group has gifts and talents. You have ministry. You have a reason that God has you here. And I fully believe that God is going to do in you guys more than you ever thought possible. Do you realize something? I want you to realize something with me. It wasn't until Jesus left that the church started.